Hello everyone, Mark with High Tech Legion. In this video, I'm going to be doing an overview and also building a system inside the Phanteks Enthoo Pro. This system is highly customizable right out of the box and has so many features and options that it offers that I'm going to be doing the best to show you everything that can be done with this case and show you just how much customization can be done right out of the box without having to get into extensive modification. We're going to be going through the complete system installation as well as installing a full water cooling loop inside this system without having to do any drastic modifications to the chassis itself. Stay tuned. So here we see the case completely broken down. What I've done is I've completely removed all the 5 1/4 inch bays that were up here, which also attaches to the side panel here, which is what your 3 1/2 inch drives slide and lock into. I'm not going to be using any 5 1/4 inch drives or 3 1/2 inch drives in this build. So we've completely removed those so that we could make room for the water cooling components here. No modification was necessary to the case to do that. There were maybe 10 or 12 screws, Phillips head, holding in all these front drive cages. It took maybe 3 or 4 minutes to remove. We can see if we look at the front of the case here that your I/O panel, including your 2 USB 3.0, 2 USB 2.0, microphone and headphone and reset button are attached to the front of the case. They're not dependent on the drive cages or anything to stay installed in the case. I've also removed the 240mm fan from the front of the case, and that has been mounted to the slot provided at the top of the case. So we're utilizing the fans that the case comes with for rear exhaust, the 240 and the 140mm. In the front is our 240mm rad with 2 120mm fans that will pull air through the radiator and will exhaust the air through the 2 fans included in the Phanteks case. Here is my pump and reservoir combo. I had a couple little mounting brackets that I used that went mounted to 2 existing holes in the bottom of the Phanteks case. No drilling, no modification was necessary. I just had these 2 brackets laying around. There were 2 holes that lined up perfectly, so I utilized them to mount my pump there so that the reservoir would be very noticeable once we get the fluid filled, very presentable through the side of the case. You could also mount an additional 240mm radiator down at the bottom of the case, or a 120mm radiator, a 360mm, a 120 or a 240 up at the top of the case. You can also mount 3 120mm fans, 3 140mm fans, any combination of the 3, or as I said, the 240mm fan. On the back there's the mounting for the 120 and the 140mm fan, and it is adjustable up and down so that if you had an air-cooled system and you had your heatsink facing towards the rear, you could adjust this fan up and down so that it lined up perfectly with your heatsink to exhaust the hot air out the rear of the case. Let's take a look at the back side of the case and all the options that Phanteks includes. You can see all our cables just kind of loose right now. We're going to tidy all those up after we get the system completely built. We can see one nice feature here is these are Velcro straps. They're screwed in so they can be removed. If you prefer to use zip ties or something of that nature, there are little metal pieces here that you could attach your zip ties to. Otherwise, these Velcro straps feed nicely through the little metal bracket. They're not going to break. Well, I'm sure if you tugged hard enough they would break. You can feed your cables through, pull your Velcro over, attach it down, and you're all set. If you need to remove components, if you need to remove cables, etc., you can just undo the Velcro and remove that cable. Instead of having to cut a zip tie, replace a zip tie, etc., Phanteks has included all of these Velcro straps here to make cable management on the back of this case a breeze. all the way up for your 8-pin on this side of the back, all the way up here for all the rest of your cables. You can see even feeding through here with 2 grommets through our case for the 8-pin here, fan cables here, other cables that you might want to feed through. Plenty of grommets in this case to assist with cable management. Also on the back here we have a PWM fan header. On the front of it here is one 4-pin PWM cable that you would feed up and plug into your motherboard. If you plug that into your CPU socket, you could control that through the BIOS. That will control the number 1 header here, which the 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 headers are black. This number 1 header is white. The number 1 header will then consecutively control all the other headers. So whatever you configure in the BIOS for this 4-pin PWM cable to control, that will set the control for all 6 of these fans. And you can plug 6 fans in here up to a combined 30 amps. We see our power for our PWM here is already plugged in, and it is a SATA connector. So it is not a standard Molex, it is just a SATA connector. So that's, in my opinion, a little bit nicer. The Molex connectors are kind of old-fashioned. Phanteks is moving forward, having the SATA here for power. Here we can see our SSD bracket. Phanteks includes one with the Enthoo Pro. There are also mounting down here for a secondary bracket. So like I said, I'm only going to be using one SSD with this machine. I won't be using any additional hard drives, but you could still remove all of these drive bays, and Phanteks does have additional SSD brackets to purchase from their website, and you could mount 2 SSDs here to the back of the motherboard tray. No drive cages needed, and you could still have 2 SSDs mounted in the system. If we take a look at the drive cages, this is what gets removed. So when we take out our 3.5-inch drive cages, which also have mounting for 2.5-inch drives, it's simply 2 thumb screws that separate from the bracket beneath. They slide out. Our 3.5-inch drive bay slides right out very easily also. On the side, there's just a clip mechanism. You would place your 3.5-inch drive in place, lock them back in place, and that would lock your 3.5-inch drive. There's also mounting holes for your 2.5-inch drives if you wanted to utilize the drive bays here. They slide back in, clip and lock in place, very secure. You have mounting for 6 3.5-inch drive bays included with the case, and mounting for up to 8 SSDs or 2.5-inch drives. 1 mount is included, so 7 out of the box. You could purchase an additional mount for a 2.5-inch drive down here to make a mounting for 8 2.5-inch drives or SSD drives from Phanteks. Phanteks also has additional features that you can purchase from their website to add to this case, lighting kits and things of that nature. But out of the box, it's really a very well-rounded case. With all these drive cages and stabilities being removed from the front of the case here, we can see if we try to flex the case, it's still very sturdy. It doesn't flex. It still holds intact very well. So even with all the structure of the front of the case removed, the case is still a very sturdy, stable design. They've done really well with that, with the case, making it very customizable right out of the box, so people can fit whatever they want to without having to extensively modify the case. If you want to modify the case, there's plenty of options for that as well. Like I said, your PSU cover is included right out of the box, so they give you a lot of features for a case that is only $99. Not a lot of other cases feature a lot of these types of things directly out of the box at that price point. We see little rubber feet here for our power supply to sit on to help to prevent from vibration. On the bottom, there is rubber on the bottom of our case feet to also help prevent vibration. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 PCI expansion slots on the back, and of course it will fit a Micro-ATX, ATX, and extended ATX motherboard into this case. So we're going to go ahead and get the power supply mounted in, get our graphics card in, and we'll be right back. Okay, and here we can see we have the water tubes installed. All the components are installed. The water loop is pretty much filled right now. I have an external power supply hooked up and jumped to run my water pump so that none of the components inside the computer are running at this time. And as you can see, I have some paper towel laid out for leak testing so we can test the system to make sure that it does not leak, so that none of our components will get damaged by the water. And we'll take a look at a couple of the other accessories of the Phanteks Enthoo Pro. Here we can see the accessory box that is included. Inside the accessory box we have some zip ties and a couple extra Velcro straps. We have a mounting bracket that could be used for a radiator. If the 5 1/4 drives were still in place, there's a screw that would mount it to the top and two that would hold it along the side, and you could mount your reservoir or pump right to the side of the 5 1/4 drive bays there. Because I mounted my radiator in the front here, as we can see, I removed all of that to allow adequate airflow. And then we have the owner's manual, or the user's manual. The user's manual goes through installation, it goes through panel removal, chassis disassembly, and it walks you through pretty much everything that you would need to know to go through this case install. Another nice feature is our toolbox here. Most cases we see come with, you know, little plastic baggies with the screws inside. While they're separated nicely, a lot of times we're fumbling trying to open those baggies. We open the baggies and we're trying to get the screws out. Screws fall, they wind up dropping to the ground. So Phanteks has included with the Enthoo Pro a little toolbox here, a little plastic case. We open it up, all the screws are separated by dividers. The dividers are removable, so we could slide these dividers out. So this could become a multifunction toolbox down the line. But what I use this for is when I was dismantling all the parts, I was able to put my screws in the different components with the matching screws. And then when I had to put pieces back on, it was very easy to find the screws that I needed. This is a very nice feature. It might be a small feature, but it's something above and beyond, and sometimes those small features make all the difference. While we let the pump continue to run here, as I talked about before, the front panel also has a filter set up on it. It's very easy to remove. It snaps in place and you can grab it from the underneath. It's a little difficult because I have the secondary power supply right in front of it, but it pops right off. And inside the front panel we see the filter for the front fans here, which is, there's little retainer clips that hold it in place. If we pop those clips loose, we could remove this front filter and very easily clean it, wash it out, blow it out, whatever you choose to do. Inside there we see this metal mesh that is held in by a few retaining screws here and little plastic mounts so that it holds it in securely. The mesh could be removed if you wanted your fans to be exposed, if you wanted some kind of custom look. Phanteks has made this case really easy to customize. Lastly, we'll take a look at the top panel, which is the same as the rest of the panels. It just very easily clips in place, locks down, and you would just lift up to remove the panel. We can see again here that there is a filter inside this mesh, but it's not quite as easy to remove. You would actually have to bend back all of these little tabs here, and then that top mesh would remove and the filter would remove. However, the whole top panel is very easy as it just clips and locks in place. So if you wanted to remove this plastic top panel, which has this nice aluminum finish, you can remove this, blow it out, you could wash it out. There's no electronics or any kind of circuitry attached to it. It's easily removable. Filter is easily cleanable. Another very nice feature of this case. And if we look at the front side panel here, we can see that there are two very nice windows, which when mounted on our case here would show off our hardware very nicely. This is a large window, pretty much to the top, all the way to the top to the bottom of the case. Only leaves just over an inch of border here, and then another small window here. If the hard drive cages were in place, this small window here would show off the Phanteks badge that is mounted there. Or if you wanted to customize something to mount in this window, just another added small window. They're very nice. They have maybe a very slight tint to them, but for the most part they're very clear to see through. Very nice windows. Very nice features added to this case at the price point that it's selling for of $100. And that about wraps up our review on this case. We're going to let our water go ahead and test, make sure that nothing leaks, and then we will get you some test numbers so we can see some temperature comparisons in this case, see how the case performed, and we'll get you a final overview. Stay tuned. So here you can see the completed build inside the Phanteks Enthoo Pro. Just a couple of things that I wanted to note. Because of the thickness of the two radiators that I have, which are 54 millimeters thick, and then the fans on top of that, which are 25 millimeters thick, that's the reason I had to mount my radiator in the front of the case. There's only 52 millimeters of clearance in the top of the case for a radiator plus fans. So if you had a thinner radiator or an all-in-one water cooler that had a radiator that was only a thickness of up to 27 millimeters, you could mount a triple radiator or dual 120 radiator up in the top of the case. But because of the thicker radiators that I had, mounting up to the top of the case would have made contact with the other components that I installed, like the top of the motherboard. With a thinner radiator, this wouldn't be an issue, but something that I wanted to note, because the case does have expansive capabilities for a lot of water cooling. You just have to be aware of what size radiators you're going to put inside the case. At the price point of $89.99, the customization that is available right out of the box, including everything being so modular that you can just remove it with a Phillips screwdriver, it is a great case at this price point. Here we can see the full side window, the smaller window up in front. They are slightly tinted, but with everything lit up inside, you can still see the hardware through them nicely. I hope you enjoyed our review. Make sure to look for the full review on the hightechlegion.com website, and also make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up on all our latest videos that are posted. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/HTL Reviews and twitter.com/hightechlegion. Thank you.